Good morning, everyone. It's 2 minutes past 10. Is that, I believe. I would like to begin by welcoming everyone to this meeting of the Assets and Procurement Committee here at New Shire Hall, and everyone watching. It's 2 minutes past 10. Is that probably? I would like to begin by welcoming everyone to this meeting of the Assets and Procurement Committee here at New Shire Hall, and everyone watching. That's fun. Right.
Testing. Testing.
Good morning, everyone, again. I would like to begin by welcoming everyone to this meeting of the Assets and Procurement Committee here at New Shire Hall and everyone watching via YouTube. The County Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and use social media during the meeting. Can I ask that everyone present turns their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? Please be aware that this meeting is being live streamed and that a recording of the meeting will be available to view on the County Council's website. There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, please leave by the nearest marked fire exit and assemble in the car park. The closest fire escape is through the middle doors on my left. Agenda item number 1. Would the Democratic Services Officer report any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from councillors Goldsack and Nethsinger, with councillors Sharp and Goff substituting respectively.
Thank you. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? In which case we'll move to agenda item number 2, minutes and action log. We're being asked to approve the minutes of the committee meeting held on 28 November 2023 as an accurate record. If any committee member wants to raise a question on the accuracy of the minutes only. In regards to the minutes, could I ask John McMillan for an update on Mill Road?
Following the withdrawal of Centre 33, the Mill Road Library will be remarketed in the next few weeks. The aim is to market for 12 weeks and to take recommended bids to committee in June. Consideration will be given to bids with demonstrable financial resources that deliver environmental, heritage and social outcomes, as well as a financial receipt. Bidders will have to consider the purchase cost. It's guided at 700,000, as well as the cost to refurbish, which we now know could be a 7-figure sum. The building was registered as an asset of community value, but this lapsed in July 2023. It can be re-registered after the 6th of February. This will mean, as before, that a qualifying community interest group can serve a notice of intention to bid, which triggers a 6-month moratorium, during which the council cannot complete a sale. The sale should not be postponed while an ACV registration is being completed. It just means that we can carry on with the sale in parallel, and we will not be able to complete a sale once a 6-month moratorium is triggered.
Thank you. So if there are no objections, are committee members happy to approve the minutes as written? Excellent. Right, attached to the minutes is an action log. Do officers have any updates? I think that may have been the update. Do members have any questions? Councillor Connor.
Yeah, it's to John McMillan, please. If I may, I think this is the right time. How many times can they register this as a community asset then? Because if they've done it for 6 months and it ends in February, can they keep doing this as many times as they wish to? Because that's not good for the sale, is it?
Yes, they can register it again and again, and it can be registered even after we sell it. So, for example, had we sold Centre 33, it could be re-registered then. So should it be sold by Centre 33, they would have had to go through the asset of community value process as well. So it's never ending in that sense.
Doesn't hardly seem fair, does it? But I suppose we are where we are. Thank you.
Councillor Dupre.
Can I just check with officers? I believe that there is a right of challenge to the registration of an ACV by the owner of the property. Certainly that was pursued and successfully challenged by a property owner in my own division recently.
John McMillan.
Well, it has been registered yet, so we'll have to consider whether we challenge it or not. Certainly the last time we didn't challenge it.
Any further questions? In which case, we shall move on to agenda item number 3, petitions and public questions. We have no petitions or public questions. Agenda item 4 is the East Barnwell Community Centre and Library redevelopment, with an update on the development being led by Cambridge City Council. Members, this is a key decision item. Can I ask John McMillan, Head of Assets, to present this report, which is on page 21 of your agenda pack?
The County Council owned community centre with early year provision at East Barnwell on Newmarket Road in Cambridge, and the nearby library on Barnwell Road are shown edged in your pack in yellow at the end of the report. Both are dated buildings and the community centre requires frequent maintenance. It has long been the Council's aspiration to redevelop the community centre. The community centre site belonging to the council is allocated in the current local plan, along with the church sites on both sides, for a mixed-use development and requires the replacement of existing community facilities. The council has worked on a standalone mixed-use development, a larger development incorporating the church next door, but each time has struggled to make them financially viable. Proposals have been considered by members to include the early years provision on and off site. The requirement to re-provide modern community facilities has proved difficult. The proposal before you today follows an approach from Cambridge Investment Partnership, a Cambridge City Council joint venture with Hill Residential. The City Council own the housing with commercial units beside the county site, as well as a nearby bowling green on the other side of Barnwell Road. Previously, SNR approved the collaborative CIP proposal in September 2022, which now includes the Barnwell Library as well as the community centre. The proposal now before us is for the county to make a £500,000 payment and sell the existing community centre and library, and in return be provided with a new library and early years building on the Bowling Green site. The City Council will build and retain a new community centre. The new library and early years building will be let on 125-year leases at a peppercorn rent. They will be built to BREEAM excellent standard. The council will be fitting out these buildings, which it is leasing back, and there is sufficient budget allocated. The City Council scheme is in 3 phases, and as well as the community facilities will provide 129 homes, mostly affordable. The scheme is heavily dependent on £9 million of Homes England funding, and the application for this will be made when planning consent is obtained. A planning application has been submitted and a decision is expected in May or June after the elections. The County Council has carried out a Red Book valuation to assess what the council's contribution in money and assets is in return for the 2 leased back properties. The difference is that the council is receiving £5,000 less. The proposal brings significant social value to the community in the form of a purpose-built preschool and a modern library with improved facilities for young families and people who want to work or study there. Pathfinder Legal's view is that the difference in value is marginal and the best consideration is being obtained. Heads of terms with the City Council are agreed in principle. As I've said before, budget is available. Service partners have agreed to this design. The key risks at this stage are obtaining planning. Several rounds of positive pre-application advice have been undertaken. Homes England funding, again, discussions have taken place. And another risk is the asset of community value designation, which may delay the sale if approved. And there's a qualifying community group wants to buy.
Thank you. The local member, Councillor Boulat, is here and would like to speak.
Thank you. Good morning, members and officers. I would like to speak today as the local councillor for Abbey Division, and I just wanted first of all to thank all of the members and officers and of course community members and community groups involved in progressing this project and what it seems to be a very long debate on this, although I have only been in the council since 2021. I know this has started over a decade ago. I'm really pleased to see what has been achieved so far on this. I think the community is becoming to be more positive, not to see more delays on this project, but at the same time, we need to have a result and an outcome on this project that, as I said, the people who were involved in the initial consultations of this over a decade ago, as children, as teenagers living in Abbey, are now closer to my age and won't be able to benefit from the community facilities that are promised back then. So it's really, really crucial progress with this project. It's also really important as a county council focusing on the aspects of this paper to focus our discussion today on the library as well as the nursery provision. Of course, there are some other outstanding issues in terms of the city council's contribution, in the sense of, I know committee members have received some representations from city councillors, and I do agree with some of those comments they made. But of course, from the county council perspective, we need to focus on our contribution in terms of our part of the project here. There's still some discussion going on with some of the community groups around, of course, making sure we manage traffic in development, making sure that there's a balance of affordable homes and all of those issues that are really important for community. But I have to say, from the county council's perspective, from the provision of the library as well as the preschool facility, the feedback that I receive as a local member has been overwhelmingly positive, and the community definitely wants to see those facilities in the wider development in East Barnwell. So I really do hope that when we come to 2025 and the next county council, we don't keep on debating and discussing East Barnwell papers. So that's why I encourage you to support this project today, and hopefully we'll have a positive outcome that benefits all of the community in East Barnwell, Abbey, and beyond as well, who will be using those facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions for John? Councillor Count.
Thank you. I'm just looking for some clarity, please. The question is on regarding point 3.5, and it says that the difference in the value, let me just get there. The value of the new assets is 5,000 less than the market value of the old assets, 745,000, comma, plus the proposed £500,000 contribution. I can read that either way. I can read that as it's 5,000 less than 745 plus 500, or I can read that that is 505,000 less because the 745 less the 500. So is the difference 5,000 or 505,000, please? Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. One question, and is in terms of, it mentions on 3.7 about funding of preschool with Section 106 contributions. As part of my declarations of interest, I'm co-chair, joint chair of governors at Bodisham Village College, and we are taking pupils from that area already because some of the secondary schools in Cambridge are full, and we're 300 formentary, so 300 each year, and we're getting full. So I just wonder where I know it's moving on a bit, but where is the county council building itself a liability there for those? Obviously, we've got to educate those children, but I'm just wondering where the funding is going to come from.
That's outside my remit of expertise, really. I mean, we're going into sort of education funding here. The point I'm making in that paragraph is that we have 106 funding to fit out the early years provision building and also the library as well. That's all I can comment on at that point.
If I can come back, Chair. Thank you. Yes, obviously on a normal, shall we say, commercial development, you would get Section 106 contributions from the developer. I'm just wondering where that's coming from in this situation.
So this isn't 106 money that is coming from the city council as a developer. This is 106 money that's coming from developments in the wider area. I can't sort of say specifically which developments, but the libraries and the early years service tapped into 106 money that they have available from developments in that area. And that's as far as I can go.
Councillor Beckett.
Thank you very much. I noticed that in this, we are disposing of freehold and getting back a long leasehold of 125 years. Obviously, most of us won't be around at 125 years, but I was wondering if there's any reason why it's a leasehold and what would happen at the end of that leasehold and what the provision is for renewing that.
That was the best deal that we had available. I mean, the initial leasehold that we were offered was 25 years, so we negotiated up to 125. I'm not sure what I can say. You know, what will happen in 125 years' time.
I just wasn't quite sure. I know with residential properties, there's always a condition to extend the lease. I wasn't sure whether with commercial properties we have that option as well, or whether that option exists, or whether it would simply return to the freeholder.
I'd have to take legal advice on that one. But the point I would like to make on that is, in the calculation we made, that financially a long leases plus 500,000 equated to what we're getting back in terms of value. That's how it all balanced out.
Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Thank you. It's a follow on from your point, your 125-year lease. Is it a full maintaining lease, and is it with the city council? Could you clarify that, please?
Sorry, I didn't catch the second bit.
Is it a full maintaining lease, and is the lease with the city council?
Yeah, the lease is with the city council. And the city council are responsible for the structure, etc., and we're responsible for the internal decorations and fittings.
That's on the, if I may, that's on the initial fit out, but continually going on over those 125 years, it'll be down to the schools and the city council to do that. Surely not the council, this council.
Yes,
that's correct, is it?
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. My apologies, I hadn't intended to speak on this matter, but I'm utterly shocked by the answer which was given about what will happen at the end of the 125 years. Now, the lease, which presumably we've seen the lease either will include or exclude sections 24 to 28 of the Landlord and Tenant Act 1954 in relation to what will happen at the end of the lease. So are we excluded or included from sections 24 to 28 in the lease which is proposed, please?
So those points will follow on once we've agreed the heads of terms and we bring in our solicitors. Generally, we exclude.
Councillor Bowden.
I was going to say generally we exclude, maybe we exclude when we are granting a lease. I'm just really rather puzzled here. It is quite a fundamental issue that was raised by Councillor Beckett, and I'm astonished that we don't have even a prospective answer to that question.
Any further, John?
No further. Those points will be developed and finalised when the solicitors we've appointed are Bevan Britons, and they'll start work on this once the heads of terms are agreed.
Councillor Beckett.
Thanks. So just to confirm that, so the freehold would remain with the City Council, so we retain in public ownership, and we have yet to negotiate exactly. So there is potential that we could include provision going forwards.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Would anybody like to debate this item? Councillor Dubray.
What I'm wondering, given that there is some uncertainty about what might be in the heads of terms, is whether C, to delegate agreement, it says to delegate to agreement, but there's a redundant to delegate agreement to the final lease terms to the executive director should surely be in consultation with the chair and vice chair of the committee, so that there can be some at least democratic oversight of what happens, given that there are some questions which we're not at all clear we've got full answers to at this stage, and fairly fundamental ones.
Is that a sensible, so that would be an amendment, in which case, well, should we continue? We can, do we vote on that now or later? Okay, so the amendment would be to C, and C reads, delegate to agreement to the final lease terms for the new preschool and library to the Executive Director of Finance Resources if grant funding is secured, in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of this committee. Councillor Count.
Chair, I'm going to object to the improper use of the Constitution yet again. It seems to me that it's very convenient for the administration every time they want to make a minor amendment to ask for it and get it granted when it's only allowed under emergency issues on things that arise on the day. If people paid attention to the paperwork coming forward, this is an issue that we've repeatedly said that delegation should be, including the chair and vice chair, and we'd expect this to be worked up beforehand. I don't think the Constitution allows this today. And I don't think it should be, I cannot see that it's somehow some kind of major emergency that has caused this on the day. I think that you could ask for the actual wording of the Constitution to look at it. It is your Constitution amendment that you brought in that stopped us from doing this sort of thing. Not us that brought it in, but you seem to be able to ignore it as and when you wish.
Chair, I think what I'm suggesting is something which is tidying up something which is entirely within the way this council usually in all other matters operates. It's not, for example, suggesting some major new legal agreement wrung out of the blue, which was the reason why we decided we had to be much clearer about things that could be thrown into debate at the last minute. What I'm suggesting is nothing abnormal. It is exactly just a tidying up to restore this to normal procedure, which is, I think, where we need to be.
I would agree with that, and I would be prepared to accept an amendment from anyone in this committee of this manner. So at this point, we vote on the amendment. Is that correct? So can I see those in favour? Can I see those against? And can I see any abstentions? That was carried. So return councillor Count.
Chair, as I say, I'm fed up the way that this keeps happening. Can I ask that this be reported to the monitoring officer for advice subsequent to this meeting? It won't affect much during this meeting, but we need a determination whether we're going to stick to the Constitution or whether it's just selective in the way it's implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beckett.
Just to come back on that point, the Constitution states that we can add an amendment at the chair's discretion to ensure that the efficient or proper discharge of the council's business. I believe that that is very much the case in this situation. We are right that we do not have, large scale amendments, but this one is clearly to enable the efficient or proper discharge of the council's business. Thank you, Chair.
Moving beyond the amendment, is there any other elements of this paper people wish to debate or question? Councillor Beckett.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think it's just to ask that it be noted for the record that I think I would like us to have the opportunity to extend that lease in the future. Obviously, the council, we are thinking in advance of 125 years. So when those negotiations come up, and through you, Chair, it is my preference that we would have the ability to extend that lease in the future. And I am at least whelmed by the fact that the freehold is held by the City Council. So hopefully should be in the interest of the public purse to do that. Thank you.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chair. May I support what Councillor Beckett has just said? It's not a minor legal matter to let the solicitors sort out about whether the relevant parts of the Landlord and Tenant Act 1954 are excluded or included. It really should be, especially for a body which, a committee which is dealing with assets. It really is quite fundamental to the agreement which takes place. And I've really been surprised by the very casual way in which this appears to have been approached up to this point. And I would support what Councillor Beckett has said, and I would hope that when this does come back to you and to the Vice Chair, that we ensure that sections 24 to 28 of the relevant Act are included in the final agreement.
Would anybody else like to speak? Councillor Count.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm struggling to support this, right? Just in terms of background history, there was the option to go alone, and the county council, which was going on its own at that point in time, was talked into an agreement to work something up with the city council, which had land nearby. That decision to work up a joint agreement has cost us 10 years in delivering this. And now we learn that the primary reason for that, because the delays, in my opinion, were caused by the city council. And now we find that it's actually because it wants to hold us over a barrel with planning and get a load of affordable homes at our expense. Whilst I understand that there is a £5,000 difference in valuation, I cannot understand how we get there when we talk about where we are at the current situation. I mean, the first thing we've just heard of is we don't even know what that major clause in the terms of the lease is going to be at this point. We also know that the £9 million from funding from Homes England is actually dependent on this. All right, so it's a bit premature because the grant is not secure. There are concerns regarding the profit share, which we're excluded from. There are concerns regarding the service charge, which is not quantified. In fact, there doesn't seem to be major discussions at a point at which we would know that we'd be able to work out the £5,000 or not. I welcome the point about the affordable homes, and I welcome the point about some of the community assets. However, reading the local press, there does appear to be a lack of engagement with the local community that's quite palpable by reading of their objections. This is all at pre-planning stage, and the value comparison is way too early considering all of those options. Additionally, the value comparison is between the option in front of us and the market value, and we seem to have lost the one of the guy alone, which, considering how long it takes to get this through, I'd have loved to have seen that, given us a free and a fair assessment of what's going about. And then during the actual contributions from Councillor Alex Boulat, something I'm totally unaware of, if we still need to hear about the City Council contributions that some members have been made aware of, but I haven't. So bearing all the above in mind, it seems to me that we are proposing to delegate agreement at far too an early stage regarding something that's very unsure. So I don't think I can support it, Chair.
Councillor Machini.
Thank you. Can I just remind the committee really very quickly that as at the time that we brought the decision to proceed with not going it alone, we had, now I can't remember exactly how long, but at least a year, if not more, since the decision that we would go it alone. And at that point, there was absolutely no provision for any kind of planning. And can I remind, and you know, it will be in some minutes, of the very public apology that Councillor Count made to the then Strategy and Resources Committee, that he hadn't realised that he hadn't been invited to cut any kind of ribbon since the whole decision had been made. There was no provision made, and there was absolutely no planning that made sense. The only planning that makes sense is with the landowner next door for the site that comprehends everything that you need, which is why this is actually not particularly straightforward to do. We are getting there, which is extremely good news. People have been waiting long enough. Those children are still in a porta cabin. So can we please get on with it? Thank you.
Can I clarify with the officer, John, if the county council were to go it alone, the risk presumably would sit with the county council, whereas I understand the risk is ring fenced here or whatever.
We've tried very hard to go it alone on our own site, and as I said in the paper, it's impossible to make the scheme viable, and that's largely because of the community facilities that we've got there. Our site is a very small site. We're obliged to re-provide the community buildings. What we're doing now is working with the City Council on a much larger site, and the cost of those community facilities are spread across a much wider area, and together with the Homes England funding, that is how the City Council are making it work.
Thank you. So we have an opportunity to significantly improve what local residents would be offered. Would any other members like to? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting listening to some of the debates, and obviously I am very new to this project, so I don't know as much as other members. But I do have concerns. I have concerns about the education funding, and I'll be sat in CYP this afternoon, so I'm sure I'll be asking a question there. I've got concerns about obviously issues around the lease, and I've seen concerns on social. Once I knew I was subbing on this, I started looking at it, and certainly concerns around on social media. I know social media, you know, can't take it for granted. I'm surprised the amount, this has been going on so long, that the paper isn't in a better shape. Is my best way of describing it, because I think there are still issues that haven't been resolved on the paper. So for that reason, I can't support it in its current stance. Thank you.
John, would you like to make comment on the fact that some of it is inconclusive at this time?
Heads of terms are of necessity heads of terms high level. The detail will be filled in when we appoint solicitors Bevan Britton, and they work through the detailed, putting the flesh on the bones of the heads of terms.
And so presumably, if we don't make this decision today, we won't be able to progress to put the detail on the heads of terms.
Exactly.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Councillor Ambrose Smith.
It's a question again. Sorry, John. The library and the community centre, community building, is it one building? Could you confirm that first?
Yes, the library and the community centre would be one building, and the early years provision would be a separate building.
Yes, and regarding the library and the community, it's a shared building. So there's parts of it which there needs to be a service level agreement in place for the library and the community to use to share that building. And reading some notes somewhere, I think that's going to be hard fought, isn't it?
But it is something that we anticipate being able to put in place. I mean, we have lots of shared buildings. That's the direction of travel in local government, sharing with health, sharing with other parts of local government.
Yeah, with my experience, it doesn't necessarily work, but Thank you for clearing that point up.
Would anybody else like to speak? In which case, the committee is asked to note that the viability of the redevelopment scheme is dependent on approximately £9 million funding from Homes England. Approve the freehold disposal of East Barnwell community site, the surrender of its freehold interest in Barnwell Library and an area of highway land if grant funding is secured on a less than best basis, insofar as that is the case, on the grounds that the scheme as a whole will deliver significant social and economic well-being improvement to the local area. Delegate to agreement to the final lease term, and C, delegate to agreement to the final lease terms for the new preschool and library to the Executive Director of Finance and Resources if grant funding is secured in, what was the wording? Sorry. In consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of this committee. Can I see those in favour? Can I see those against? And can I see any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you very much. So the next item is the Business and Financial Plan, agenda item number 5. The Business and Financial Plan 2024 to 2029, and this starts at page 31. Before I ask Michael to introduce the report, can I first note that we are scrutinising proposals set out in this report to inform Strategy, Resources and Performance Committee, who then consider the proposals at its meeting on 30th January before any recommendations are made to February's full council. Given the wide range of content, I suggest that we take the report section by section. I will then ask members if they have any questions on that for officers, and then any issues they would like to debate before moving on to the next section. At the end, I will ask Michael to summarise what the feedback is the committee has included to be reported to the Strategy, Resources and Performance Committee. I will ask members if the summary is correct, and if not, any changes we agree need to be made. Michael, can I ask you to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. And as was just noted there, this is in relation to the overall Council's business and financial plan that was presented to Strategy and Resources and Performance Committee on the 19th of December. What's covered in this paper is the areas within the remit of this committee. So set out at table 4 are the items of growth within the budget proposals, including such factors as inflation. Table 5 sets out the savings and incomes proposal, including proposals around the office estate. Tables 6 and 7 cover then the corporate capital programme proposals, but I also note at paragraph 3.7 that the committee has governance oversight of the capital programme and continued improvement and drive for improvement in that area as a remit of this committee. And finally, just note that a number of other committees are therefore considering other capital programme aspects and will be discussed and debated within those committees.
Before we move on to section 2, the land and property strategy was due to come to this committee today for discussion before being finalised in March, and that is now. Can you describe what the process for that? Because some of the planning as part of that is within this budget paper.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we plan to bring something to note and then engage through that. Actually looking at other developments of strategies such as equality and diversity, we're now planning to hold a number of members' workshops and bring that strategy back to this committee in the March meeting, and this will help inform. One thing to clarify in terms of some of the proposals that we've got set out here, we are airing them as proposals for scrutiny and then full council, and clearly that will then take forward the decision making process, and that will then align with the strategy as we're taking decisions most likely past and beyond the 1st of April 2024.
Thank you. So members, do you have any questions on section 2? Councillor Sharp.
It's not necessarily on section 2, but it's on a comment that's just come up there that Michael's made and the chair has made. We're talking about a land and property strategy coming to the March meeting. Presumably that land and property strategy will have budget implications. So why is it being done after we're actually setting the budget? That seems bizarre.
So through you, Chair, a strategy doesn't in itself have budgetary implications. It sets the field of vision for the decisions taken. We currently have a strategy in place. This is bringing together those strategies and the proposals that are set out within this paper, which we'll get to in terms of the debate, are not affected by that strategy.
Councillor Sharp. Does anybody else have any questions or debate on this section? Okay. Members, do you have any questions on table 4 covering inflation, demand pressures and prioritisation proposals? Councillor Count.
Not so much a question, but an overall comment about the whole paper, which is encapsulated here. What we've got is an accurate reflection through the officers' eyes of their views of things such as inflation. Now, inflation, some of that is made up of fixed prices, such as tied up with September rates for some. Others are their best guesstimate with their professional opinion on other things, such as what wage inflation might be next year. So it's hardly a set in stone tablet, but it's okay. It's a starting point, shall we say. But the whole point about the business plan is, whilst these areas are sifted in isolation, in terms of the actual overall business plan, it interlocks. So if there's a £2 million extra saving or extra expenditure, it interlocks with something like the highways. Now, considering the fact that we're all fully aware the Conservatives will bring forward an amendment to the February budget, it's very difficult for us to sort of say, yes, we're happy with these figures in front of us because they interlock with other figures, and therefore I can't really support them. And also what I really don't like about the way that this table comes about which is why I've got in there, is it's very much about the world as we see it moving forwards. And there's no, and we get words about government funding, we get words about inflation, we get words about demography, but nowhere here do we actually see the failures of the council in delivering its savings and its performance in this year. So the budget gap was widened immensely by the lack of deliverability on the solar panel schemes, for example, across the whole county. So that doesn't get encapsulated here. So overall, whilst this is an accurate reflection of certain figures as the officers see it with their professional judgment, it is not perhaps how we will see it in February, and therefore I can't really support the paper. So it's more of a general comment. Thank you, Chair.
Michael.
I would note out on the bottom of page 36 the impact of the running of this building. Oldcombury is a good example of where there was an underestimation of the budget in terms of the running of a building at a point in time that is now being corrected. So there is examples within this budget whereby we are correcting previous estimations.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Thank you. Members, do you have any questions on table 5 covering the savings, income and reserve proposals? Or would anybody like to debate this? We'll move to members. Do you have any questions on tables 6 and 7 relating to capital and oversight of the programme? Would you like to debate this? Councillor Bywater.
Yeah, thank you very much. Michael, thanks very much for your recent briefings. And, I've been here a long while, but it's also very good to get, updates about how we go through this process. one of the things that I've noticed at page 40, the very bottom item, which is confidential schemes, there seems to be, we've communicated by email about, my views on confidential schemes within the whole budget process, but how are we as members supposed to understand that? What is that confidential scheme? It's £1.1 million. How does that reflect on what we see that being spent on as taxpayers' money, really? Because I understand in education there's lots of confidential schemes, and I think that's a good move, because ultimately there's commercial sensitivities in relation to building schools and keeping our cards close to our chest in relation to spending. But how does the public and us as members see what that is, really, is my challenging question, really.
Michael.
Thank you, and thank you for Councillor Bywater email correspondence we've had in relation to this. And again, the same principle applies here in terms of we have a number of developments, in particular in this area in relation to our rural farms, excuse me, where we're going through a number of procurement proposals in terms of the development and change of sites, which we do not want to give away our indication of our budget to potential bidders for those works. We have followed this approach in previous years. We have, I think, within the tables alluded to greater information, but quite happy to share with councillors confidentially the details behind these schemes.
If I may, yeah, thank you very much. It's just that, is the local member aware if it impacts on a local member in a particular part of the county? How does a local member, without you disclosing it to them, how does a member know that it's confidential? What's happening is my question. Because if we just look at all these papers, I use Sawtry, for instance. I know that we're looking at a school there, and I understand why it's confidential, but I had no idea which line in the budget it was. So yeah, that would be my plea, really, is proper disclosure to members about what that is and how it impacts on them.
Through you, Chair, and noted, clearly there are a number of plans out there in terms of, for example, the schools organisation plan has the schools that are being invested in, if not the sums. So we do have in public arena the school and the school development plans. That's something we might want to pick up on the next item further. And the member officer protocol clearly sets out in terms of when officers should be engaging with local members in terms of their carrying out of their divisional duties. But I'll take the comments forward and make sure that in all cases we are corresponding with the local member where that's appropriate.
Would anybody else like to speak? In which case, I would like to say that I am very pleased with this report. I know a lot of work has gone into it. I think it's extremely accessible. So I can show this to residents in my division and they can understand it and they can interrogate it themselves. And I think that's incredibly important. And I think that's not always the case with finance papers that I've seen. The general approach is to try to find efficiencies and to look to maintain what we have better. This is something I'm very supportive of. In fact, the National Audit Office has picked this up as a failing in government in a report which I read about today. So I think we are going in the right direction, particularly bearing in mind the changes in the ways in which people work, making office rationalisation a very sensible thing to do. Would anybody like to speak before we have a summary? Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chair. You were going to go through this section by section. You haven't yet got to the end.
Okay, sorry. I think I mentioned tables 6 and 7, did I not? Okay. So the appendices. No, which?
No, before that, you've got sections 4, 5 and 6.
All right, sorry. Sections 4, 5 and 6. Well, who would like to discuss section? Would anybody like to ask any questions or debate section 4? Are there any questions about section 5? Councillor MacDonald.
Just more of a suggestion and observation. I know that this will come back, Chair, when we're looking at property rationalisation, especially when we're looking at capital values. You know, there are some very large sums, potentially very large sums of money, and I know we'll have an opportunity to look again, but I think the opportunity to deep dive, especially on those capital receipts, would be very welcome. Thank you.
Chair, thank you. Members will note the appendices to this report has some indicative values and they're significant and therefore would be caught and would be brought back to this committee for decisions at that point.
Would anybody else like to speak? Would anybody else like to speak on section 6 and any of the appendices? Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I'm not an enormous fan of the way in which many councils formulate their papers which come out. I think that quite a lot of the items which are in there are quite formulaic. And I try and resist that, certainly at Fenland District Council. But here at County, we have a system, and we've got this under section 6, although almost all of the numbering says it's section 5, but in fact it's section 6. And under what's called 5.8, but should be 6.8, we see the implications sections, which I've taken the trouble of waiting until today to check again on the public website to make sure that this hasn't been updated. But in a formulaic basis, we're asked, as we are on many papers, have the resource implications been cleared by finance? Have the procurement contractual council contract procedure rules implications been cleared by the head of procurement and commercial? Has the impact on statutory legal and risk implications been cleared by the council's monitoring officer or Pathfinder Legal? Have the equality and diversity implications been cleared by the Equalities Act super user? Have any engagement and communications implications been cleared by commissioners? Sorry, by communications, my apologies. Have any localism and local member involvement issues been cleared by the service contact? And have any public health implications been cleared by public health? And what we see on the paper in each case is no, yes. So we have the system in place, and then we're not told if those things have actually happened or not. Now, I assume that they have happened, but that's not what we're told. I wonder if we can have confirmation, first of all, that all the answers to those questions should be yes. And secondly, could we make sure in future that when papers are produced for this committee, we do get the answer so it's clear that those things actually have been done? Thank you.
Noted, Councillor Bowden. I can confirm they're all yes, and also note the paragraph numbering before, and we'll make sure that that is tidied up and that doesn't happen again. But they are all yes.
Would anybody else wish to speak? Are there any questions? Would anybody like to comment on any element of this paper? In which case, could I now ask that Michael summarise the outcome of the committee's discussion so that it can be recorded in the recommendation to the Strategy, Resources and Performance Committee?
Chair, I note that there's no specific recommendations to Strategy, Resources and Performance Committee from the notes that I've taken, but clarity has been asked on confidential schemes and disclosure to local members, and we will follow through with that.
Thank you. Members, do you agree that this is an accurate summary of the outcome? Councillor Ambrose Smith has indicated he'd like to speak.
Thank you, Chair. These proposals form part of a wider overarching council budget, which has already been said. These are your proposals, not ours, and as such, you will have to vote them through without our support. Thank you.
Thank you. So the report recommendations are A, consider and scrutinise the proposals relevant to this committee within the business and financial plan put forward by the Strategy, Resources and Performance Committee, 19 December 2023. B, recommend changes and or actions for consideration by the Strategy, Resources and Performance Committee at its meeting on 30 January 2024 to enable a budget to be proposed to full council on 13 February 2024. Can I see those in favour? Can I see those against? Thank you. That was a majority. The recommendations are carried. Councillor Count.
Apologies, may I interrupt on a point of order, Chair, due to something that happened earlier on in the meeting when we was talking about the amendment being moved on the earlier paper. I stood corrected by Councillor Alex Beckett, who read out from the Constitution. I've got the Constitution in front of me, and I'd like to put on record that the words "in exceptional circumstances" are in that phrase, which didn't seem to come across when Councillor Beckett was talking about it. And I don't believe those were exceptional circumstances. So I restate my request that for further guidance and advice this to be taken up with the monitoring officer. I've got no problems. It was such a minor thing today, but we can't flex the Constitution at our own will. And if that sort of change should be allowed in future, then I suggest that joint administration who introduced this change to the Constitution ask that the Constitution be further amended and clarified so that it can continue in this manner. Thank you.
Thank you to Councillor Count. That has been noted. Number 6, asset management and the maintained schools estate. Can I ask Jonathan Lewis, Service Director for Education, to present this item? This report starts on page 53 of your pack.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. So this report is presented today more for information and clarity around what I consider to be a quite complex landscape we have around schools and education. And I normally focus my feedback into 3 points, but I think there's a fair few issues in here that I'll just spend a few minutes to just unpack to support the committee. As the report outlines, we have around 112 schools that are in maintained schools under local authority control. Obviously, we've seen a complex education landscape come through with academisation, and we also have greater complexity around faith-owned buildings across the county. So this is not a straightforward position, and hopefully the clarity the report provides helps to give some understanding. We have a duty around ensuring our schools are sufficient, appropriate for education. We also have a focus in ensuring good condition of our buildings too. And the analysis we undertake through condition surveys, feedback from the Department for Education suggests we have a good estate, but within that we have a full range of condition issues and focus. We very much use our resources to ensure those education assets are maintained. However, due to the limitation of funding available to us, we focus on warm, safe and dry as our first aspiration, and then we focus in on improving our assets to improve educational outcomes. It is a complex landscape. We have devolved arrangements with governing bodies, the local management of schools, passes that responsibilities on, although obviously we have an oversight in terms of the general upkeep and investment in those buildings. And we also devolve our statutory compliance arrangements, particularly around fire, Legionella and contract control, to be managed by local governance arrangements. However, we do audit and we do oversee those arrangements to ensure compliance. Essentially retain responsibility around asbestos. I think that's a really important area that we do hold an oversight. We have a number of our schools that have asbestos, which is managed and appropriately overseen. And we've recently had some HSC inspections that have looked at our processes and oversight of those arrangements. The report also covers the decarbonisation agenda, how we work with schools to look at investment schemes that are funded through loans, namely SALIX or through council funding, that seek to improve our carbon footprint, improve the condition and suitability of our buildings, and save resources at the same time. So we have a scheme running that we're looking to extend more widely. The paper also covers our school organisation. It's come up as several comments already in this committee. We have an education organisation plan that lays out very clearly our expectations around meeting need for school places. I often describe school place planning as a dark art. It certainly is. It changes on a rapid basis, and we use all the information available to us, including health and GP registrations, house building, and other factors to develop our programme and ensure that we meet need. However, the context at the moment is an interesting one across Cambridgeshire. We are seeing areas of growth with new housing, but we are seeing areas of decline with falling birth rates. So to give you the stats, we were taking nearly 7,700 children into reception 9 years ago. That's now down to 6,400. So we are in a position that we are having to adjust our schools' estates to meet the needs, and that has led to some decommissioning, reductions in PAN, and the unfortunate closure of a school last academic year as a result of that change and alteration in the needs for place planning. Finally, the report also covers some legislation which is relevant to this committee around Section 77, which is the disposal of school playing fields. It is very difficult to alter the uses around schools, is a constricting factor around capital receipts. However, we can work proactively with the Department for Education to oversee those arrangements, and the capital programme does include receipts where appropriate from surplus school assets, and obviously a focus will be to review that in light of falling pupil numbers. So hope that's a helpful overview. Very happy to take any questions around the report. Thank you.
If I can begin by asking a question, which is that I understand that you wrote a letter about RAC in schools and the payments for schools under academy ownership. Could you tell us what the response from the Department of Education was?
Yeah, so members of the committee will be familiar with the challenges around RAC. We were a very proactive local authority in terms of undertaking surveys, and we commenced our activity in July 2021 to review all our buildings. And when the issue came up nationally, we were in a good position to respond to that. As you said, Chair, I wrote to the Department for Education, the regional director, and requested that the costs associated with undertaking the surveys were refunded. I didn't get a response directly. However, the government has now published a scheme whereby up to £4,000 per setting can be reclaimed, but only for those surveys that were undertaken between the 30th of August 2023 to the 1st of November 2023. So those areas or those schools that were late in undertaking their reviews will be refunded. And unfortunately, the costs we undertook, and we undertook the whole of the estate, including academies, because we felt that was appropriate, and to protect our children and young people and our staff in schools, we will only be able to reclaim any of the surveys that actually were late for us in our process. So not a satisfactory response that we've had from the government.
Yes, that is disappointing. We were very proactive, we were ahead of the game, and we are being penalised for that. Members, do you have any questions? Councillor Count.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, John. I found this a very interesting paper. It was very educational. It took me a long way down the road of discovery of what was going on, and I really did learn quite a bit from it. So I welcome it from that particular point of view. But there are a couple of questions that I've got about it. The first being, so despite my welcoming my improvement in my knowledge, I have to ask why it was a public committee debate paper and not a briefing paper that we could have had at a kind of member seminar sort of thing. Because I understood the administration, and we agree that we should be using these meetings for decision-making meetings, and I don't see the decision-making in this. But like I said, I did enjoy reading it, and I've gotten a long way in the understanding. So that's my first question. The second question is, there is a note about 9, I'll get the point up for you, 4.3.3, 9 school decarbonisation projects have been delivered. I was just wondering over how long a period that was. And then just, I might as well cover an impression I got of the paper the same way. Reading the paper and looking at the specific issues such as RAC and that was going on, and the different way we have to behave with our maintained estate compared to the academy estate, I kind of got the impression that our responsibilities, our protection of our assets, the way we guard our assets was weak. All right, and this perhaps is due to the complexity of the structure that we work within, and that kind of went down that line of thought. It said, look, we admit we're weak, we know we're weak, we don't have the powers to exactly do what we'd love to do, but it didn't come forward with any options on how we could put some meat on the bone for a preferred way forward. It just sort of we're weak and we do what we can. I would have liked to have seen something like that in the paper to maybe some options. Is there a way to improve this coming out more from that? So really just two questions and then just a sort of feeling. But I did think this was a well-written, very informative paper, but just not sure it should have come to committee. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. In relation to the 9 schools, I don't have that information to hand. Can I suggest I send around a note afterwards and perhaps list those for you so you can see geographically in the types of schools that we've covered as part of those arrangements? Can I just seek some clarity in terms of the approach being weak? Was that in relation to academies, just to be really clear about the lease? So the arrangements around leasing for academy, which obviously you've had a conversation already about leases and how they operate. We have to work within the confines of a national policy around those leases. There are 2 options available to us. One is that we have a peppercorn lease arrangement. We hand that over to the Academy Trust for 125 years, and we have oversight. For instance, they cannot sell. We do have the right to inspect. We do have the right to review, and we do that. The other option we do have is that we can retain the building and charge a rent, but are fully responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of those buildings. I think the decision historically has been that's difficult to manage. We take on a lot of challenge, extra work, and it was felt that was probably, the risk was too great to us because we have, we're not running and operating the building. We don't have the direct influence over the trust to oversee that. I think you do make some good points, though, around control on those assets. We've certainly spent more time talking to CEOs of academy trusts around things like shared access facilities that are on sites, how some of the arrangements when assets transfer as part of those lease agreements could be enhanced, particularly around sporting facilities and making sure that those joint use agreements are strong and refined. And I think over time it would be important that we continue to audit and challenge back. And that would be my suggestion about how we tighten those arrangements, is that we put in place a cyclical review, given we're now sort of 10, 15 years into the academy programme, to ensure that over time they are refined. But ultimately we are stuck with a national agreement that we have to follow. But I think there's things we can do, particularly that one around review.
Michael.
Chair, I was just going to clarify. It came out of the RAC committee paper that came here, and I think it was September, requesting a report on how schools were being managed, and that was the original purpose. I agree, it could equally have been a briefing paper.
Councillor Count.
Yeah, thank you for that. Absolutely fine with all those answers. And if it was a committee request, it's appropriate. It comes back here. It was just occurred to me why. So I'm glad we got that answer. The other one's coming in the post at a later date. I'm absolutely fine with that. And in terms of what you added outside the paper about a cyclic program, that was what I would have liked to have seen, some kind of regularization of saying, look, at the end of the day, these are our assets, they're full repairing, but we will get them back at some point in time. So therefore, because we've seen elsewhere in the non-schools estate a really tragic example of where we didn't get in there often enough to see how the tenants were behaving, so that the damage was done and then we had to pick up the tab. So it'd be great if we could see something like that. So thank you for taking those comments on board. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. May I also thank Jonathan for a very interesting paper and presentation today. And reference was made to Salix Finance Limited, which is a very interesting company, it has to be said. It's a company limited by guarantee, wholly owned by the government, which is purposed to achieve a whole host of things to do with decarbonisation. And it has a large amount of money available for projects around the country in the public sector. And it releases those monies in waves, as they call them. And once a wave is announced, then a very limited time is available in order to make an application in order to bid for the money which is available. And it's often necessary to bid because it's very often substantially oversubscribed. However, it is possible on an informal basis to get advance notice from Salix Finance Limited that these waves are coming up. Do we have those informal contacts currently with Salix Finance Limited so that we can manage to get that advance notice, or is that something that we should try and achieve?
I think I'll need to confirm this, but my understanding is that through the climate and energy team, we do have good relationships with Salix, but I'll confirm that.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, John, for the paper. Very interesting. Just two questions, really. One is, and I think you've touched on it, and you might have answered it, but when a school is academised, is there a sort of a sign-off of the state of the property, for want of a better word, so each side knows where they're at, and or they're in inspection? And the second thing, is 4.47, and it's something close to my heart in terms of not disposing of school playing fields. And obviously, yes, as it mentions falling roles and surplus capacity, obviously we then have to consider it, but it's something, presumably we haven't disposed of anything in recent times, but just be interested on that. Thank you.
So in terms of when an asset transfers to an academy trust, there is a discussion about the condition of that building. Again, the safe, warm and dry test is what we apply to it. Obviously, schools are in different condition, and it's for the academy trust to take on that condition and invest with it. There is some money that the government makes available to academy trusts to consider upgrading their positions, but that is a negotiation at the time. We tend to just focus in on those bare basics rather than decoration, access, those other issues. It has to be around, keeping the school open from one day to the next is our real focus for that. In terms of the capital receipts and working through, certainly in the time I've been in Cambridgeshire, I'm not aware of any disposal of school playing fields. The one area we do look at Section 77 around is the re-provision sometimes. So where we've extended schools, we have to seek Section 77 to build on the playing fields. Often that comes with conditions such as where we do that, we have to build hard standing. There is allowances made for facilities that can be used year round as opposed to grass surfaces that are going to be used at certain times. So that negotiation is ongoing. So we do have that type of arrangement going forward. I think I've already mentioned the school that we closed in the summer. There will be a decision to be made around the school playing field there, and Section 77 will apply. But obviously that will be subject to member scrutiny and challenge and oversight to that. So
I can just come back very quickly on that. So obviously, I know it costs a lot of money. So would that apply, say, where a school would be looking to put a artificial surface down? You'd have to get permission to do that because you've sort of put an artificial surface over grass.
So yeah, that would have to be part of the conversation that would happen with the DFE, because what happens is that you have a red line around a building and you have a red line around a playing field. Section 77 applies to the playing field. So if you encroach on that, you have to seek Secretary of State's agreement to make changes through that. And it's a fairly drawn out process, but actually a good one because it really stops development happening on school playing fields. And obviously we go there where we have a good case and an appropriate case to take around developing educational outcomes. And actually one of the spirit of 77, if there is a disposal, it needs to improve educational outcomes as a result.
Thank you. Councillor Dubray.
Thank you. I just wanted to say something briefly about the section on investment in decarbonisation of the school's estate. It was the very first committee meeting of the Environment and Green Investment Committee under the joint administration, which agreed to put together the package from various different sources that would enable a lot more of these installations to come within scope of being viable, paying back and so on. And that's something I'm really pleased that we did, because that has enabled a number of schools to come forward that otherwise, for whom otherwise this wouldn't have been a viable solution. So I'm really pleased that we did that. On the question of academisation, 4.3.4 says that this is something that we have an opportunity to consider. And I think we do need to, because there are a number of issues about this. Clearly, there has to, at the moment, academies we will offer advice and support to, but we will not fund. the issue is with the move towards on the part of government trying to push or force in some cases all schools into being academies by 2030. That leaves us with the question of how we deal with and what our policy is towards installing clean energy solutions in buildings which we do not have control over. And that's a policy decision. What is our priority on that? Should we prioritise reducing the council's own emissions and emissions in buildings over which, for as in the case of maintained schools, we have control? And that's something I think we really need to have a discussion about. And members of EGI will also remember a very awkward situation we had to deal with, in which a lot of work was put in by officers to bring together one of those packages to enable the installation of a clean energy solution at a school. Which was very keen to go ahead, and then the package was successful. The money was granted in PSDS grant. Everything was ready to press go, and then the school said, "Oh, and by the way, we've decided to become an academy in September." At which point we had to go, well, what is our policy on this? Are we prepared to bend our policy in the case of an installation we've already agreed? But in a sense, that was kind of solved for us when the Multi-Academy Trust turned around and said, no, actually, we don't want to go ahead with a clean energy installation after all. So there really are some difficulties here around the push to academisation and what that means in terms of our priorities and the deliverability of some of those clean energy installation solutions. And I really look forward to having that debate and considering that further, as the paper invites us to do in the future budget considerations, because it really is very important. Thank you.
Councillor Count, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. One which I've just picked up on with Councillor Dupre's comment about the decarbonisation under the joint administration, which is all very welcome and very good. You know, the £2.7 million that's achieved, the 9 properties, the £1.2 million moving forwards. Of course, this follows on from the Millie programme under the previous administration, which secured £28 million for investment into decarbonisation. Which not only assisted in the decarbonisation, but also helped bring down school bills in many cases because of the way that the loans were structured. It was a different programme, but we're all heading the same direction. Speed of change or the money available perhaps hasn't been the same during this administration because, of course, under the last one, we did get it mostly from government, which was very useful, and perhaps it's not the same at this point in time, but we'll look for a return back to that. But realistically, why I wanted to put my hand up, and that was just following on the good work of the current administration, following on from the good work of the previous one, was talking about the RAC letter, which I hadn't picked up on earlier. And it just occurred to me, will you be appealing that, John, and sort of saying, you know what, we've missed that deadline, it's unfair, this is why, could we have some money? If you do, I think it'd be worth a letter. I'll certainly row in with the DUHLC national group, which I'm on, just to see if there's others called out the same way and see if we can bring any weight to bear. So if you do care to do that, please circulate it and I'll do what I can as well. I think it would be useful if we had a second bite of that cherry.
Yeah.
I think another letter would be much appreciated. I think probably the chair to send. I think I'm also going to reach out to the chair of the chief executives of the Academy Trust Group, because obviously on their behalf we undertook this work, and I think it would carry some further weight from having that supporting us around the county council's cost and investment to make sure children are safe. So I think that as an action, I'm very happy to draft a letter to go back up to Department for Education.
I think that sounds like a very good idea. Can I ask about Section 5, alternative options considered? This approach is not considered appropriate and there are 2 reasons why providing a service to maintain schools in terms of maintenance is not. Is it sort of an ongoing conversation so that if the situation changes, because I can see reasons why it might be attractive, or are there any ways in which, say, an element of it might be considered?
It's something I think our schools would very much like us to deliver. And obviously we trade a number of areas with our schools. I think that there's a couple of challenges around the viability of that trading. How consistently can we secure income from schools that can enable us to have that support? My view is actually there are providers out there that we can work proactively with. So we've been doing a number of initiatives recently around collective purchasing on behalf of schools, things like HR support, payroll. And I think this would be another good example of where working together with our teams, and we've got some excellent people working for us, could help shape and broker a specification that would deliver that property service that they're looking for. So I think short term is probably that's the best route. Longer term, obviously, we'll keep that under review and see where we go. Obviously, understanding the landscape 2030, academisation, where this may go, may change that. But at the moment, I think this is our approach is probably sensible in terms of risk and management, just making sure that we're clear on what's going on in our schools. But we're very proactive in being in our schools, so we are picking up maintenance issues, concerns as we go forward.
Thank you. Would anybody else? Councillor Bywater.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just picking up Councillor Dupree's point. Yes, absolutely. You know, there's some good work going on in relation to decarbonisation, but it's crucial that we have joined up thinking in this, and I'll use Giddings School in relation to that, because, you know, 12 months prior to offloading Giddings School, we put a new central heating system into it. So, you know, that's taxpayers' money that we really need to think about. But that's not a criticism. You know, water's passed under the bridge and we are where we are. I'm just talking about points of learning, really. I haven't got any questions because you've answered about decarbonisation and the school numbers. I think it's also important that this is, I think, going to be Jonathan's last meeting to come to this committee before he leaves the council. Over the last 6 years, I've been very used to reading your papers, Jonathan, and you know they are very detailed, very good, and you know they're presented in a manner that we can all understand. So thank you very much, and I absolutely agree that the dark art of school place planning is, I'm still trying to work it out 10 years down the line. So yeah, it is a challenge and it will continue to be a challenge. And I just really want to say on behalf of myself, and I'm sure I speak for members really, is just to say thank you very much for all your efforts. You've been an inspiration to not only members, but to staff, which is very much appreciated, and good luck in your new role. So all the very best. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I think we all agree with that. Thank you very much. And this is a really excellent, really interesting paper that I do intend to recommend a lot of people read. Councillor Ambrose Smith, did you wish to speak?
I don't think I'll spoil the party. It's okay. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to say anything? In which case, members, we are invited to acknowledge the implications of sufficiency planning and statutory restrictions on the use of the school's estate for the council's land and property strategy 2024 to 29. Does everyone acknowledge this? Does anyone have any objections? In which case, we have acknowledged it. Agenda item number 7, with the democratic services, the committee agenda plan, training plan and appointment to outside bodies. Would the democratic services officer please update us on any changes to the published report?
I have no changes, Chair.
Thank you. Members, we are asked to note the agenda plan. Can I also does anybody want to comment on the agenda plan? Can I also draw members' attention to 2 workshops that have been scheduled on 16th February at 10:30 and 1st March at 11:30 to feed into the land and property strategy that will now be coming to the March committee. Invites have gone out from Democratic Services. Can I also note that the initial training for the new Procurement Act has now gone live? The training that is likely to be of most use to begin to update members on the changes coming. The link will be circulated to members. Members, that's the final item on today's agenda. Our next meeting is on 21st March at 10 a.m. Thank you very much and good morning.